It's 2012. The Indian fan market is dominated by players like Havells, Bajaj, and Crompton. Nobody has dared to enter this highly competitive market till date. On average, only 2 units of fans are sold per consumer per year, and the replacement cycle is a whopping 7 to 10 years. To try and penetrate the thick walls of this highly competitive market would be like a suicide mission. But there was one player to rise to the ranks of the giants, one player to offer a better fan experience to the average Indian consumer. They call themselves Atomberg. Now, Atomberg launched a game-changing fan that boasted energy savings, innovative features, and competitive pricing. From a measly 70 crores in 2020, this brand scaled to a whopping 1000 plus crores in ARR as of 2024. And in this episode, we are going to discuss the home and electronics market in India, Atomberg's growth and marketing strategy, as well as their future prospects and growth. So with that said, let's perspectivify the shit out of this.
So, what you need to understand about the fan market is the fact that it comes under a much broader category, which is the home appliances segment, which is a $75 billion industry in India. And it consists a lot of subcategories, right from air conditioners to fan to even the toaster that's in your kitchen. What's interesting about the segment is that if you look at it from an overall perspective, what you'll realize is that whichever companies are in this industry, they are not only selling just one item in this market, but they're selling multiple items. For example, we know Whirlpool for its washing machine as well as for its ACs. We know Havells for its fans as well as toasters, right? So you can't just be in one category if you want to be a big company in the home appliances segment. The reason for all of these massive players to be in multiple segments is because India right now doesn't have the product level depth to just go deep into one market and not tap into other markets. Otherwise, you'll be a very, very small player. Which is why you see all of these players not only get into one category, but use that one category to build trust among consumers. And once you have the consumer trust, you can essentially go and launch other categories as well, right? What's interesting about this home appliances segment is that it's undergoing a major shift, right? And we can categorize those shifts into 3 areas. The first is that there is a huge rise in smart home appliances. So you see everything becoming smart these days, right from your TV to now even fans, right? Second thing is that there is a rising disposable income in India. We've talked about this multiple times, but the point is that your India 1 and India 2, their disposable income is rising, and that becomes a huge market to capture and bring in new innovative products into it. The third is, before say 2015, majority of this market used to be offline, which meant there was no online retail and people were not comfortable buying all of these things online. We've already seen a massive shift from offline to e-commerce and now even to quick commerce. Another interesting thing about the home appliances segment is that this industry is already pretty big, right? So if you look at the overall growth of the home appliances segment, it's just growing at around 5.5% year over year. But what's interesting is that those companies that are actually targeting the smart appliances, that market is growing by 8.5%, which means that currently, if that market is at approximately $34 billion, it'll grow to $53 billion by 2029. By growing at 8.5%. So everyone realizes that this is the next level of growth unlock that will happen in this industry. Every company in this segment realizes that they need to capture a pie of the smart appliances industry and to really grow in the future. What's interesting is that Atomberg saw this trend happening 10 years ago.
What Atomberg launched is a very interesting variation of the regular fan that was present in the Indian market called a BLDC fan. Now, for the uninitiated listeners, we don't know what a BLDC fan implies. Think of it this way, right? To just give you an analogy, think of a car with a windshield that has brushes. Right now, with every stroke of the windshield, it's brushing against the sort of window of the car, causing a lot of friction. That's also wasting energy and causing a lot of noise. Now, you can use the exact same analogy with the regular fans at your home, right? In the motor, they already have this brushing system which is causing a lot of friction and causing a lot of energy wastage and a lot of the noise also we hear in the fans, right? Now, what BLDC fans are, which is essentially brushless direct current, which is essentially another way to say that these fans don't have the regular brushing system. They have a magnet that actually helps the fan rotate at the same exact way as the regular brush fans, right? The only difference here is that because there's the absence of the brush, there's lesser friction, lesser noise, and lesser energy wastage, right? This is why the BLDC fans actually end up saving a lot of energy and a lot of also savings in terms of money for the households using the BLDC fans.
As per one of the claims of Atomberg, you can approximately save 1500 per year by using a BLDC fan, right? What's also interesting about the BLDC fan is that it's not a new technology. It is an old technology, and almost every single traditional player knew about it, right? But they did not want to change. The reason for that was because if a fan costs 1,500 to 2,000 rupees, a BLDC fan can cost upwards of 3,000 rupees. That is a difference of almost 100%, right? This is why Havells, Crompton, all of these players did not want to change anything about their fans and were happy controlling the market position. So when Atomberg came into the B2C segment, what they realized was that we can't have any control over the price. We know for a fact that our fans are going to cost between 3,000 to 4,000 rupees. Some of their fans even cost, I think, 4,500 to 5,000 rupees now. But what they essentially said was that we won't focus on the price, but rather we will focus on rethinking the entire consumer experience. For example, for the last, I think, 150 years, fans have not had a remote control. You need to literally go to a regulator to regulate the speed of the fan. The speed of the fan has never been, for the last 150, 200 years, it's just been between 1 to 5. Nobody was asking these fundamental questions. And Atomberg came in, rethought that entire experience and said that we'll make it simpler for the consumer. And I think that is where they created a market for themselves. Now, another thing that they realized was that, they need to be design focused, because whoever will buy their product would be people who are in the affluent segment. And they also targeted those people who were spending money on things like interior decorator. So one of the interesting things that we read was that anyone who was spending more than 10 lakh rupees in their interiors was essentially coming to Atomberg. So Atomberg sort of reached out because they realized that these are the users who want that aesthetic look in their flat. And because the fans look old of Havells, Orion, Crompton, you don't really want that in your house. You want something designer friendly, or you want something interesting to show off to your friends, right? I think where it worked out for their consumers was the fact that they did luxury branding really well. What that means is that a lot of times when you've bought a luxury product, right? Let's say you've bought a Nike shoes, you tend to sort of after spending 10,000, 12,000 rupees for that shoe, you're like, you always have that doubt, or people ask you, why have you bought at 12,000 rupees? So you need some features to essentially tell your friends or convince yourself that you've made that right decision. So the energy saving part, which was 1,500, became that thing where users were spending between 3,500 to 5,000 on a fan, but they were justifying the cost of getting a remote controlled fan by telling the other person or convincing themselves that we are saving 1,500 rupees a year.
Now, talking about their initial phase of growth, which was extremely interesting, when I was sort of reading their case study, First thing you have to understand is that obviously Atomberg was trying to go kind of digital and offline, right? If you think about it, most of the people who buy fans are actually buying it in the offline markets, right? It's only much later in the 2020, etc., 2020 onwards, etc., that people started buying online, right? So initially the challenge that Atomberg faced was that, number one, are retailers in the offline space willing to sort of sell their brand, right? And number two, obviously sort of penetrating the other markets and also figuring out the growth from that point on. Now what Atomberg did initially was obviously go to all these retailers, figure out where they can sell their fans, and obviously lot of the retailers turned them down, saying that what, you guys are, you're just sort of new to the market, we can't trust you as such. But they realized a very interesting market for their initial set of fans, right? Which was the ceramic industry. Right now, the ceramic industry actually uses fans to sort of, I think, no, I'm still a newbie to this, but so to sort of cool down their production of the ceramic equipments, and in that sense, if there is a fan like a BLDC fan that actually helps save energy over time, save cost over time, for so many fans rotating in that particular industry, right? It makes a lot of business sense for these industries to adapt such a kind of a fan, right? And that's where Atomberg actually found its initial niche, which is to sell B2B to the ceramic industry for a while until they scaled from a 0 to 10 sort of scale.
Another interesting fact is that this entire ceramic industry is actually located in the Mobri district in Gujarat, which is a very, very small district. What Atomberg did was that they essentially went there every single time, and over 2 years, they captured in the entire 90% market in that specific segment, which essentially gave them their product market fit. So I think that's what Atomberg did really well over here. Even though they finally got product market fit in that Mobri district, but their ambition, the Atomberg team's ambition, were quite big, and they always wanted to be a consumer focused brand. What's interesting and where they got lucky was that in 2015, there was a huge revolution that was happening in India. That revolution was e-commerce. Everyone was burning money, including Flipkart, Amazon. Everyone was pouring billions of dollars into marketing and promoting the fact that, you should come and buy online. And Atomberg were one of the first companies to actually apply to be partner for Flipkart and Amazon both, right? And that is where they, for the first time, started selling their fans directly to consumer and filling in their ambition of actually becoming a consumer first brand.
The interesting thing here is, I was listening to Arindam Paul's podcast, and he actually talks about how their team was very, very focused on talking to consumers and actually going in the offline markets and understanding how people think, what people want, etc. Now they found three main cohorts that defined most of the marketing going forward. One was, people in the range of 5 to 10 LPA worth of income, which is kind of the middle class audiences in India. Now these people were actually looking for the Atomberg fans. They were buying the Atomberg fans simply for the fact of energy saving, right? That you get to save 1,500 rupees per year in energy, which can add up to a lot over the long run, right? The second being tech adopters, which just wanted the fan experience with Alexa, and remote control, right? Remote control sort of fan experience. And the third being just luxury buyers, right? Who wanted great interiors, who were sort of designing their whole home and they wanted like the best fan experience in their home. So these were the three cohorts they realized were the primary buyers of Atomberg fans. And I think what's interesting is that how Arindam said that, they actually built out separate marketing targeted to each of these cohorts rather than doing a pan-India, pan-consumer marketing, sort of mix. They actually focused their targeting on these three verticals, right? And we'll get to that shortly. Now, talking about how they actually scaled, their initial growth, which primarily came from platforms like Flipkart and Amazon, right? And I think a very interesting thing here is Amazon's flywheel effect, Now, in case you don't know what that means, Rakshit, right? So think of it this way, right? Whenever you are promoting a brand on Amazon, how Amazon actually pushes, its ad algorithm is based on a couple of factors that obviously includes keywords, price, all those kind of things. But the one important thing to note here is that if the brand has a lot of history, right, in terms of a lot of sales, a lot of good reviews, that's also considered a part of the algorithm, right? So the natural flywheel or thing, I mean, a flywheel basically means something that as you spin, it keeps going faster and faster. And the natural flywheel is that in the initial phase, you have to spend a lot on Amazon ads to sort of grow. But as your product increases, the reviews increases, it becomes like a self-sustaining engine, and your CPMs and CPCs drop over time.
Yeah.
Right, so that's interesting. That's something that people may or may not know about Amazon ads. And obviously this is what massively benefited Atomberg in the initial phase of growth. They spent a lot on Amazon and Flipkart ads, and I think that's what supercharged their engine in the initial days, right? And now talking about their strategy on Google and Meta, right? And as I was saying initially, that they actually split their marketing into those three verticals of cohorts. And I was actually observing sort of how they were marketing across different types of keywords. For example, let's say that if you're a consumer writing, I want an energy saving fan on Google, right? The landing page actually that comes up for Atomberg is completely different as compared to if I write, let's say, I want to buy just a normal fan in India, right? Online. Right, so the entire experience of the landing page is completely different. It's completely curated to solve the pain points of the cohorts, right? So if in case I'm looking for energy saving fans, I'm going to talk about energy saving and how my fans are reviewed for energy savings and how it helps save costs, all those kind of good things, right? And I think that knowing how Google works, again, depending on the conversion rates, depending on how the landing page experience is, right? Google actually determines a quality score, and based on that, your ads rank much better, your cost per clicks drop a lot, right? So that was something I found very interesting. Now, the second problem that Atomberg was dealing with, as we had talked about initially, was the fact that retailers didn't have the trust to actually sell their product to consumers. They didn't know how much, sale value and conversion they would actually get offline. So what Atomberg adopted was a very smart strategy, in my opinion, which is that instead of just going to the offline stores trying to forcefully convince them, they obviously did that in one way. But another thing they actually adopted was running ads targeted to the cohort of retailers, right? So let's say I'm a retailer and I find some way of targeting you. Now what Atomberg did was run this particular ad, and we're going to pop that on the screen, which is just like Atomberg winning a particular award for being, I think, the best energy saving fan of the year or something like that. And the point is that if you think about it, it's not an ad dedicated towards the average consumer. It's just a video showing that Atomberg is like a brilliant fan. There's nothing about optimizing consumer experience, etc. So obviously it is targeted towards these retailers, trying to build top of the mind recall for the retailers, thinking that, oh yeah, this fan is something that I can probably think of selling to my consumers, right? That was very smart. I've never heard of someone trying to market to their supply side also, and actually convince people that what, we're a great product overall. Very, very smart strategy for someone in this space.
Just adding on to your point, right? I think there is a myth among people that they think that retailers will sell anything that is cheap. But what you got to realize is that being a retailer in, let's say, a Koramangala or Sector 57, you have a limited set of customers, right? And your entire business is on whether you supply good quality fans or not, right? So you would never essentially sell a fan which is of low quality, but it is at an extremely low price. You will always sell something that is of quality so that those people will come back to you. And I think that is exactly why Atomberg in its initial phase did not find it easy to go to a retailer and ask him to get it on his shop. It's because of the fact, who are you? I don't know your brand. I don't trust you. I don't know whether you will be able to give after sales service or not, right? So because of all of these reasons, it's extremely hard to get into a retail shop. Once they trust you enough, they will slowly increase the amount of risk that they are willing to take on you.
we obviously covered how they're advertising towards retailers, but the second point of their offline expansion sort of strategy also included, adding a store locator option onto the website for any average consumer looking for the Atomberg product, right? Now, what they were trying to do here, in some sense, was that, let's say I'm looking for an Atomberg fan in, let's say, Kormangla, right? And I go to the website, I find a store locator, I go to the offline store. Now, for the retailer, right, looking at the fact that, oh, there are so much footfall coming in for Atomberg as a product, right? Again, it builds more recall that, oh, this product is selling very well, which means that maybe, this is something I should offer to the average consumer stepping into my store as well.
Absolutely right. It's great for a retailer, but if you think about it, it's great for the consumer as well, right? Because it's extremely hard to change the channel behavior of a consumer, right? Amazon and Flipkart had to spend billions of dollars in India to essentially promote e-commerce shopping or online shopping in India. As a D2C brand, you don't have that much capacity and say to the consumer that I will only sell you on my D2C website, or I will only sell you in, let's say, e-commerce. It's better to be in all the places where you expect your consumer to be at. Earlier, in case of the fan industry, I think 70% of Atomberg's revenue is currently coming from offline stores. 5 to 10% is coming from online D2C e-commerce platforms. So they would be really stupid to just say that I will only promote online because that's where my margin is. Yeah, you won't get sales if you're not in retail, right? That's a very smart strategy that they play. And now that they're seeing this quick commerce wave that's happening in India, where once again, after e-commerce, the next kind of channel shift is quick commerce, they realize that they need to be there too. So they have started launching in Blinkit as well. So we've been talking a lot about trust, right? But how do you build trust is the question. What Atomberg realized was that we have these great fans. We have the best technology, we have the best IoT, and we have the best designs, right? But what is that one thing that the large players are not doing that we can do? And that was after sales service. What happens in the home appliances segment is once the sale is done, once you've given the money, there are friction points created so that you don't reach out to those companies, right? For example, I actually tried this out. When I go to Havells and when I try to lodge a complaint on their online portal, they just throw me to a blank page, right? Because they don't want people to come in there and increase their ticket sizes or whatever, right? If you're in the category of electronics, what you'll realize is that no matter what you do, if you sell 100 fans, you know for a fact that 4 to 5 fans will be those that will have some kind of a defect. You can't really do anything about it. Now, where Atomberg stood out was by building a robust after-sales service. And two interesting points that we got to note over here is that, whenever we're doing accounting, and both Dhruv and I are unfortunately accounting students, you essentially count after-sales service as a part of operations and not as part of marketing. What Atomberg did differently over here was that they said that we'll make it as part of marketing and we'll market that, right? So all their after sales service is actually a marketing expense for them. And on top of that, what's interesting is that the redressal system actually takes care of all 4 or 5 types of consumers that they essentially sell to. So whether you're an institutional buyer or you're a B2B service provider, or Atomberg has given a fan to your company, no matter what you do, there is a simple redressal system for you, right? If you look at Havells' review, what you'll realize is that people will talk about things like worst after sales service. But in case of Atomberg, what's interesting is that their normal CSAT is 80. Okay, so if you go and if you don't have any problem, your CSAT is 80, right? But if there is actually a problem in your system, because of this after sales engine that they've built, once the consumer comes to you, says that he has this problem, those sets of consumers, CSAT is 90. That is absolutely amazing because your system is so robust that consumers become more satisfied with you or trust you more after going through a bad experience. So, so very, very, very interesting.
And just adding on to that, right? I think we are seeing this more and more with the new age, high NPS companies. Like we covered Blue Smart recently. We also did Urban Company, right, in our last couple of videos, which we'll leave in the description box. And we see the same exact system there, right? Optimizing for customer experience even after the product has been sold or even after the service has been delivered. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's a very clear emerging trend that's working very well for retention of these companies.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So now, Rakshit, the last two segments of their growth strategy I'll quickly tap onto them, right? So one has been, something I call founder-led marketing, which essentially has been built up a lot by Arindam Paul himself. Now, I had seen Arindam pop up on my feed very often, and he had built recall value for me. It's just that I didn't know what Atomberg did for a very long time, right? I personally hadn't known until we had actually sort of, built up this whole podcast segment. But I think after doing this and after seeing what he had been building, I think it's much easier for me to sort of, relate to him as well as the business because of his presence on social media, right? And I think what he has been doing, especially on the likes of Twitter and LinkedIn, is not just post about, general Gyani content, right? What he's
Yeah.
been posting is a lot about Atomberg's growth, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you can see the journey as you go of Atomberg as a consumer, and I think that's also an emerging trend with some of the new age companies
Yeah.
where you'd see Albinder Dinsai, Blinkit's founder, also consistently report what's happening in Blinkit. Same with Arindam Paul, in Atomberg, and I think it builds a very very deep connection that goes beyond just
A transaction
seller
value.
consumer experience, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, if you want to know more about how you can build up a solid presence on the likes of LinkedIn for that matter, we have done an elaborate video talking about it, which will again probably pop it up right now on the screen or link it in the description box. So you can check that out.
Yeah.
And lastly, also, Atomberg did a little bit of influencer marketing to just educate the general audiences, which has been to tap into their second cohort, which, if you remember, was the tech adopters. Now they just reached out to tech influencers and actually built up some videos, of a review of Atomberg or unboxing Atomberg's fan, and I think that's also worked fairly well for them on the marketing front.
Yeah. So, with that said, I think the last segment is where does Atomberg grow from here, right? Initially, when I talked about the fact that any consumer company in India, at least in India, doesn't just build one product, they build multiple products in the consumer, in the home appliances space. This is what Atomberg is now trying to do as well. What they've realized is that they're now exhausting their TAM in the whole market space for fans. They already have a 10% market share with 1,000 crores in revenue, which is why now they have launched their next product or their next category, which is basically a mixer grinder. And they're solving the problems of mixer grinder in the exact way that they had once solved the fan problem, right? They've used that same BLDC technology in their mixer grinders as well and given full control to the consumer. They've said ki yaar, for the last 15-20 years, there is only one way the motor essentially moves, right? Or your blades essentially move. Why isn't anyone innovating on that? So their major differentiation is their mixer grinders can run from 2000 RPM to 20,000 RPM. But the only thing is that in a market where the average price of a mixer grinder is between 1,500 to 3,000, Atomberg is trying to sell a mixer grinder which is 8,000 rupees. Now, I don't know whether they'll be able to succeed with it or not, but the past experience shows that they will definitely give it their best shot.
With that said, that's a wrap on today's episode. If you have liked our podcast so far, make sure to like and subscribe, and also join our community, which we call the Perspectify community, where you get the latest updates from Perspectify videos, as well as a lot of discussions and debates on various topics in the marketing, growth, and product space. Make sure to check it out. The link will be in the description box. And that's all from me and Rakshit for today. Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, we're